Hello and welcome back to Doctor Who, the cancelled years. In this video, we'll be covering season 41 of Doctor Who. So, let's get started. Season 41 would have marked a new era for Doctor Who. It would have been the first season for Liam Cunningham as the Doctor, Kate Ashfield as Hannah Ward, Adrian Lester as Brian Whiteford, and Stephen Moffat as showrunner. This season would have brought a dramatic shift to the show after the past 4 years under Russell. Moffat wanted to take the show back through its roots and return it to how things were before seasons 38 to 40, while also acting as a continuation of that era. A strong link to the Russell era was the character of the 11th Doctor. This incarnation is more bruised and battered than any other, and is still suffering from the nightmares of the war. An ongoing arc for this character would have been him getting back into the groove of things and becoming a more positive and well-rounded character. The new companions are Hannah Ward and Brian Whiteford, as portrayed by Kate Ashfield and Adrian Lester. This would make the first proper TARDIS trio since the Griffiths era with Bernice and Chris. The season also got an episode count, as there were now 10 episodes instead of 8, with each one being 45 minutes in length still. There would be a new logo for the show debuting this season. Like the Russell one, it was quite slim but looked a bit more interesting. There was also a new TARDIS exterior, having used the old one to death since 1993, as well as a new TARDIS interior for the first time since the mid-90s. Both of these would have been designed by current show designer Edward Thomas. For the exterior, it would have essentially been the Russell T Davies exterior from our own universe. As for the interior, we get something quite different. It would have had a similar design pattern to those of the 60s to 80s, while having a bigger room structure similar to those of the 90s. And finally, there would be a new title sequence as well as a new theme tune, which would have been done by Murray Gold. And now, let's get on to the episodes. The first episode would have been The Night of New Life, written by Stephen Moffat. The story picks up with a pre-title scenes, which picks up nearly exactly where the 40th anniversary left off. The Doctor is wrestling with the controls of the TARDIS as he begins to crash to Earth. The doors begin to break down and they're forced open, and the titles begin with the Doctor hanging onto the edge of the TARDIS as it begins to crash to Earth. After the titles, we see a young couple walking through the night named Hannah and Brian. All is lovey-dovey, and then they hear a loud bang and spot what looks like a meteorite crash into the fields. They run over to see what's up and find a blue box crashed into the dirt. The doors fly open and out climbs the Doctor. He begins to ramble a bit about biscuits or something before the mood drops, as he begins to somber and ramble on a bit about a war and that he may be the last. Hannah and Brian offer him a place at their house while he recovers. In their house, Hannah and Brian go off to bed, while we see the Doctor getting used to his new body, cooking an omelette, and experiencing trauma from both regeneration and the war, as for him it's only been a maximum of 2 hours since he activated the moment. Then we see in the streets as a man in his 40s is walking home drunk. He spots a light in the sky falling to Earth, and he follows it to the crash site. When he finds it, he picks it up and eats it in his drunken state, and it begins to change him as his eyes glow purple and spikes appear on his neck, and this sets up the main plot. The story would have been about an entity named the Meta, an intelligent virus that somehow made its way to Earth. Its plan is to mutate every single human on Earth into disgusting, inhumane monsters. The story would have saw the Doctor in an unstable state attempting to stop the virus before it can kill off the planet. And furthermore, he has to do this without any help from the TARDIS, as it's locked him out while it redecorates. Eventually, the Doctor is able to defeat the Meta by creating an antidote from things in Hannah and Brian's house, which kills it off. After this, the Doctor becomes upset when he discovers that people died this night. We see that this incarnation hates people dying the most, as it reminds him of the millions of deaths he witnessed in the war. In the morning, the Doctor goes back to check on the TARDIS. He finds that it's finished rebuilding itself. He steps inside and sees the new interior. He goes through the TARDIS to the wardrobe and picks out his new outfit, as he's been wearing what remains of his predecessors for the story. His new outfit is very basic, a simple black suit and a white shirt. He goes back to Hannah and Brian's house to say his goodbyes to the two of them and thank them for their help, but only Brian is there. In a conversation with Brian, the Doctor reveals that he's gonna take some time away from people, travel around a bit and fix some of his mistakes, but no companions, as he feels they aren't safe with him anymore. He then returns to the TARDIS, sets some controls and dematerializes, unaware that Hannah is standing right behind him. The second episode would have been The Cold, written by Stephen Moffat. The story opens with the cliffhanger of the last episode. The Doctor at first doesn't really notice Hannah and treats her as a usual companion, but gets her name wrong several times and calls her Victoria, Sarah, Tegan, Benny and Jean. When the Doctor realises, he flips out, but it turns to have been an accident, as Hannah just wanted to return the Doctor's old coat. The Doctor tries to return it to Earth in 2004, but ends up in the year 1570, a time where all known diseases are a thing of the past. The plot of the story is a very basic but effective one. Hannah accidentally brings the common cold to the future, a place where the common cold hasn't existed for centuries. One single sneeze causes a major outbreak, as people who catch it begin to die and the whole planet is put into lockdown. The story is a proper test for the Doctor and shows how far he'll go to prevent people from dying. Eventually, he's able to create a cure for the cold and it's distributed around the world. And again, it ends with the Doctor upset as people died, and this time it was partly his fault. The third episode would have been Invaders from Mars, written by Mark Gatiss. The story covers the famous 1938 broadcast of The War of the Worlds and answers the question, what if there were actually aliens that night? It would have been about a race of aliens named the Placa who tried to invade the Earth. However, the Doctor convinces them that a bigger and more deadly invasion is going on by using the broadcast of The War of the Worlds to trick them into believing that there's already an invasion on Earth. Overall, this would have been a pretty cheesy type of story. The fourth episode would have been Scream of the Shalka, written by Paul Cornell. The story would have saw the Doctor returning to modern day Earth to return Hannah home. When they arrive and reunite with Brian, they discover they've been missing all day. This story also reintroduces UNIT, as well as a new head of UNIT named General Amanda Powell, who will be portrayed by Penelope Wilton. Essentially, this story is near enough the same as the Scream of the Shalka in our own universe, however it's heavily cut down into 45 minutes. At the end of the story, when the day is saved, the Doctor is about to go off on his own in the TARDIS, but is stopped by Hannah and Brian, asking to go with him. Knowing that he probably needs a companion, the Doctor allows them to travel with him, but he warns them. His life is dangerous, and things may never be the same again if they come with him. But they're still up for travelling in the TARDIS, so the three of them leave in the TARDIS to go on a new adventure. The fifth episode would have been Ghostwatch, written by Robert Sherman. This story would have been a homage to the 1992 TV movie Ghostwatch. It would have played out essentially a lot like the original Ghostwatch, with the Doctor, Hannah and Brian taking on the roles of the investigators. Like with the actual Ghostwatch, this story would have been told through the format of it being a TV show. The plot of the story would have essentially been a paint by numbers of the original Ghostwatch, with an unknown spirit haunting a house and scaring the mother and her 2 kids. We never actually learn what the entity is, and it's all left to the audience's imagination. At the end of the story, the house mysteriously catches fire, and everyone is forced to evacuate as the camera feed cuts out. This would have been one of the most popular stories in the past few years and would have been considered a fan favourite by many people. The 6th episode would have been Rise of the Rats, written by Nicholas Briggs. This would have been one of the more filler type of episodes. An alien rat finds itself on Earth. It discovers that rats on Earth are being used as guinea pigs by humans. Disgusted by what it sees, it begins to turn the rats into soldiers and prepares them for war against humanity. The story would have saw the Doctor, Hannah and Brian working on a peaceful resolution as Earth's government are prepared to fight. Eventually they make a compromise with the rats to take them to an uninhabited world where they can build their own society. The 7th episode would have been The Human Invasion, written by Mark Platt. This would have taken a different approach to the usual aliens invade planet type of story. It's set on a world populated by robots. However, one day, a group of humans arrive and want to kick the robots off-world and turn the planet into a human settlement. This story really would have tested the Doctor and put him in a very different situation on whether he helps the robots or helps the humans. He tries to make the 2 races share the planet 50-50, but the humans aren't happy, so they commence war on the robots. The Doctor tries desperately to stop the fighting, but it's too late. The robots have fallen, and the planet belongs to the humans, which really disgusts the Doctor. The 8th episode would have been The Planet Who Loved the Doctor, written by Toby Whithouse. The story would have been about a sentient planet. One day, a team of miners show up to mine the planet for minerals. However, this begins to kill the planet. The planet possesses one of the miners and escapes for its life. Now the soul is out of the planet. The minerals the miners are after are now worthless. The story would have saw the Doctor rescuing the planet's woman, who he nicknames Mary. He tries to protect Mary from the mining corporation as they hunt them down throughout space. Throughout the story, we see Mary growing very fond of the Doctor and begins to fall in love with him. However, the Doctor isn't interested and doesn't wish to love anymore, as everyone he loves ends up dying on him. Eventually, it's revealed that the reason the miners were mining the planet was because the human race is dying. Food and water supplies are at an all-time low. However, the minerals on the planet can be rearranged to produce food and water for everyone. But without the minerals, the human race will die. This puts the Doctor in a difficult situation. Does he kill a unique and sentient planet, or does he let humanity die out? Eventually, he returns Mary back to the planet, and returns her soul to the planet to power the minerals humanity needs. This leaves the Doctor feeling very down, as he admits he started to feel something for Mary, and is annoyed at himself for letting Mary die, as he hates losing people. The 9th episode would have been The Empty Child, written by Stephen Moffat. This is basically the real life episode, however there would be changes to this story. Firstly, the Tula ambulance is now just called a time ambulance, and at first the Doctor believes it to be a Gallifreyan vessel due to its similar design patterns. Also, the character of Captain Jack has been changed to a humanoid character named Deacon. Deacon is part of a species known as the Jargo. He's a part of a time agency created after Gallifrey was destroyed. The agency was set up to fix time that had been meddled with. Something happened in 1941 and Deacon was sent to fix it. However, afterwards, his time device wouldn't work for some reason and ended up trapped in 1941. While he waits to be rescued, he called the time ambulance with nanogenes set to heal his Jargo DNA, as human medicine is poisonous to him. The rest of the story plays out pretty much how you'd expect it to. Unlike in real life, this is part 1 of a 2-part story. The final episode would have been The Army of the Dead, written by Stephen Moffat. Like with the last episode, this one is based off the Doctor dances, however renamed to be more appropriate. Like with the last story, there would be some changes but nothing too drastic. The most notable change would have been the removal of all the stuff about the Doctor dancing, and instead we have some character work on him, still dealing with war trauma. The resolution is the same as it is in real life, where we see this Doctor actually happy for once, as it's a happy ending all round. The story ends with the Doctor bringing Deacon back to his rightful time and telling him to be more careful in future. And then the TARDIS receives a message from Unit HQ, calling the Doctor back to Earth. The Doctor pulls that lever down and the TARDIS enters the time vortex, and the episode ends with a coming soon trailer for the upcoming Christmas special, which you'll see in the season 42 video. And that concludes season 41 of Doctor Who. A complete breath of fresh air for Doctor Who, and one of the most popular seasons in the past few years. And that's it for this video. Next up, we'll be covering series 3 of The Pyramid. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.